It's Monday, and the Bluebloods are here with another loaded episode full of college football content for all you listeners out there. We did want to say we're recording this on Sunday, which is Mother's Day, so we wanted to give a quick shout out to all the moms out there. Especially want to shout out my mom and Brandon's mom for all you do for Brandon and I. So shout out to you
Love you,
guys.
Mom.
You guys are the best. We love you. But we start the episode off by talking about the fallout of Taulia Tagovailoa's transfer from Alabama. We then debate whether the NCAA should limit or at least manage recruiting spending across the country. We then begin a new segment called Hot Seat Watch, where we analyze which college football coaches in each conference are on the hot seat. Today, we have the ACC. And we wrap up the show with another recruiting update, which focuses on Clemson and their stacked, loaded, whatever you want to call it, 2021 recruiting class. It's about that time, so let's kick it off. Last week, man, a shocking development out of Tuscaloosa had the college football world buzzing as Alabama Crimson Tide quarterback Taulia Tagovailoa announced his intentions to transfer from Alabama. Tagovailoa appeared in 5 games last year as a true freshman, but Alabama has one of the deepest quarterback rooms in the country after the addition of 5-star Bryce Young this past recruiting cycle. Many experts have been speculating on what this means for Alabama and where Tagovailoa could possibly end up. So, Brandon, what were your first impressions when you heard the news that Tagovailoa was taking his talents elsewhere? And if you had to make an early prediction on where you see Tagovailoa ending up, where would that be?
Oh man, that's so tough. So my first reaction when I first heard about this, obviously I was shocked. You kind of think Tua's gone, and I don't really know anyone that thought that Taulia was going to take over like immediately. Right? I mean, they thought maybe in a year or so. And then once Bryce Young signed, you kind of had to figure Taulia didn't have like a great chance of starting at all during his tenure at Alabama. So, I mean, it makes sense, but it still shocked everybody. Anyway, we see the news pieces all over the place about Taulia wanting to move closer to Miami, basically, to get closer to Tua. And I don't know how much weight that carries. I mean, I understand that his entire family, once Tua went to Alabama, moved to Tuscaloosa or moved to Birmingham, right? They moved right outside of Birmingham.
Yeah, they did. They still live there currently too.
Right, and so I understand that. It's you're moving from Hawaii to Alabama for college. I mean, it's kind of weird. I don't know how many. I don't want to say weird, but it's definitely different. I mean, Zach, when you moved to Auburn, did your parents move to Auburn with you? No, I don't think so.
No, definitely not.
Right. And I don't know. To me, it's a little strange, but I don't see Taulia and his family moving to Miami to follow Tua. I don't see that as like a feasible option, and so I'm going to kind of discredit the Miami talks. I don't know that he goes to Miami. I don't think he goes to FIU. Maybe he does go somewhere in Florida, but who knows? So there are a couple good fits, but honestly, one scenario that I could see playing out, I know that he entered the transfer portal, but couldn't you just see Taulia staying in Tuscaloosa? I mean, going into the transfer portal doesn't mean that you're transferring for sure. It means that you are going to test the market. You're going to feel it out. You're going to see what teams really want you. But in the end, I could honestly see Taulia just staying where he's at, playing under Nick Saban, playing in a quarterback room with Mac Jones, with Bryce Young, and potentially having the chance to beat these players out. I don't think that's the worst option in the world for Taulia at this point.
I don't mind that take. I do think there's more weight in the Miami rumors than you might be giving credit for. I don't see him staying though. I think he's gone. I think part of that is the culture that he comes from. And I think they have a lot of pride. And so, once that decision was made, once that foot was out the door, I think there might be a disconnect there with him coming back and looking his teammates in the eye and saying, hey, I was thinking about giving up on you guys. Most of the time, Alabama transfers tend to go. I think there was one recently, right? Scooby Carter changed his mind 3 or 4 times, so defensive back. But most of the time, Saban if it's out, it's out. And there has been rumors that Paul Bear Bryant's was it great grandson is also there, and I heard he is showing out in indoor practices. I think There's a lot of people who think he can compete with Mac Jones for the starting job, and he's already been in the system, and I think that adds even another depth. I mean, I think the biggest thing of the transfer is, do you think he wants to live in his brother's shadow?
No, I mean, who would?
Yeah, I mean, because if you look at it, I'm not surprised, as you said you weren't either. I mean, Bryce Young, for me, is the future of Alabama football. The kid is probably the most elite recruit that they've ever gotten at that quarterback position. And also, Mac Jones has put his time in. I think Saban wants to give Mac Jones at least a year. I look at him, someone like A.J. McCarron and Greg McElroy, that's the prototypical Alabama quarterback that he's had in his tenure. And that just leaves Tagovailoa without a true spot in this quarterback room. But,
yeah,
I mean, Brandon, I don't know about you. I mean, we both are from Alabama. We have a lot of friends who are Alabama fans. We have our finger pretty much on the pulse of Alabama football. How shocked are you? Because I'm pretty shocked at how fast Alabama fans turned on Tagovailoa, though. I mean,
yeah.
How
shocked are you really? Because, I mean, we see Alabama fans turning on, and this isn't – yeah, okay, yeah, this is for sure just me bashing Alabama fans right now. So strap in if you're an Alabama fan. I don't apologize. How quickly do they turn on Jalen Hurts? Right? I mean, they turn on
pretty
him
fast, pretty fast,
right? So I'm not shocked at all that they turn on Tagovailoa. I think that it's par for the course for these fans.
Yeah, I mean, like how many times did you hear fans telling you? I know I was told by a lot of Alabama fans that Taulia was so much better than Tua, and whatever Tua did, you know, this kid could do so much better. I mean, it just Tua was the best Alabama quarterback of all time, and I don't know if you can really debate that based on stats. Yes, he didn't, win that sole national title. Jalen Hurts carried the team. He came in the second half. Debate that what you will, but he didn't lead the team to a national championship after that. But based on stats and his popularity, I would say Tua has the argument to be the best Alabama quarterback of all time. But Brandon, I don't know if you watched the 5 games that Taulia played in, but for me, watching his film, watching how he carries himself, I don't think he carries that same confidence or swagger that Tua did. And yes, I don't want to bash anybody on the podcast, especially a college, student or college athlete, but you just got to call it how you see it. I mean, he seems to be real in his shell. He seems to be kind of tiptoeing around, while Tua, when he walked into a room, he commanded presence. He was that true leader. He had that confidence that he can make any throw on the field. And I just don't see that. And so I think the ceiling here is much lower, which is why I think he's really out of the door, because I don't see him competing with Bryce Young or Mac Jones.
No, and I mean, obviously, I've held true to this since the very beginning. I mean, since Tua suffered his injury earlier this season, or this past season, when Mac Jones came in, I mean, I've held true to, hey, Mac Jones is the better quarterback out of him and Taulia. I've said that. I mean, run the tapes back. Alabama fans did want Taulia to get on the field for whatever reason. Couldn't tell you why. He's not nearly as good, Zach, and I understand why you're kind of hesitant on my take of him staying at Alabama. And I do have another choice, but I'll let you make your take before I pull another one out.
Yeah, I have 2. I think the obvious choice has to be Miami. I mean, if the family already followed Tua all the way to Alabama, I could see it happening again to Florida, especially if Taulia goes to Florida. So both my schools are in the state of Florida, and that's not only because of Tua going to Florida. Taulia, if you look at his college choices, there were a lot of Southern teams on that list. I think they wanted to play in the South. The competition, the notoriety, the TV deal, all that stuff plays a part here. So my number 1 choice is Miami right now. I mean, 1, you have Tua playing for the Dolphins. 2, you have a need at quarterback because Miami only has a 1-year rental in De'Aaron King. And Jared Williams has already hinted at transferring, and I don't think you're going to give that job to Tate Martell. At least I hope you wouldn't. So Taulia can come in, and he pretty much can be handed the starting job after sitting out his year. And he wasn't redshirted. He played in 5 games, so he could take that redshirt year as his sit-out year and keep his eligibility. And Miami, say what you will, they have talent in other positions. It seems to be that quarterback position that's giving them problems. I mean, Brandon, if you give them a decent quarterback against Florida to open up the season last year, they most likely beat Florida, who was a top 10 team last year, who won a New Year's Six game.
I don't want to talk about that game.
Yeah, I mean, it was one game. Brandon's upset, of course, but I mean, I think another interesting option, really and truly, Brandon, could be Florida or Florida State. I think both are in the state of Florida closer to Tua, and both fit a quarterback like Taulia what he needs. I mean, Florida quarterback guru, head coach, and Dan Mullen. I mean, can you not see taking, Taulia and doing something similar to what Dan Mullen did with Dak Prescott?
Look, I mean, I think it's possible. I think that it's way more likely that he ends up at Florida State than Florida, though.
Oh, I do too. I'm just trying to give, I think Florida State really and truly would be, if I had to put money on it, I would say that. But you can't, knock out Florida. I mean, Emory Jones does have a potential after Kyle Trask leaves this year, but he just seems to be more of a wildcat quarterback to me. I'm kind of questioning his arm strength. I know some of our Florida listeners might disagree. I haven't seen starting quarterback potential a lot from Emory Jones. So I think could be a need here. And I think Taulia, I think he could want to make a mark in the SEC without being directly in his brother's shadow in Tuscaloosa. And this would put him in a different division. It would put him in a school that has historically good quarterbacks and that he could make his mark. And I think the fans would take it. But a way more, I guess, logical option would be Florida State. Another offensive quarterback savant in Mike Norvell finds himself in his first year in Tallahassee. And this is an interesting fit to me because, Brandon, I mean, since Jameis Winston, how bad has quarterback play been in Tallahassee?
Pretty bad.
Great. James Blackman was god awful. I mean, he threw 5 interceptions in the Sun Bowl this year,
right?
And they lost to Arizona State. It was terrible, and they have talent. I mean, Marvin Wilson at defensive tackle will most likely be a top 10 pick this year in the draft, and they had Cam Akers at running back. They have wide receivers. They have secondary players. I mean, this team is built to compete for national titles, ACC titles, and they can't do it because they don't have a quarterback. And Norvell is going to have to find his quarterback of the future. And, with Taulia leaning toward the state of Florida in his recruitment and his brother's there, his family could possibly be there. I just think that would be the most logical spot. It wouldn't put him in Miami with Tua, but it would allow his family to go to both games. And I mean, even if the family decided to stay in Birmingham, it's not a hard trip to go to Florida State to see your kid play. Right.
I mean, it's honestly, I think that Birmingham's closer to Tallahassee than Miami is. But that's exactly. Anyway, yeah. I mean, I think Florida State's a great choice. That was one of them. That was one of the schools I was playing around with. But like I said, I'm going to stay out of the state of Florida for my next pick, just because, I mean, that take's been made. People all over the place think he's going to Florida. So why not give you guys a different perspective? I could see Tua, like you said, with Florida, staying in the SEC, but switching conferences. And I think there's a team in the SEC East that I don't want to say they've had troubles at quarterback, but they definitely haven't had the best look at quarterback in recent history. And that's a team in the Tennessee Volunteers. I think that Jeremy Pruitt is building a team up there with a great culture, and I think that's finally starting to come out. And I think people are finally starting to recognize that. Tennessee was a team that was up there for Taulia when he was choosing colleges. He's developed that relationship with Jeremy Pruitt, and I can't remember for sure, but I think that Tennessee was like a close second to Alabama when he was choosing colleges. And yeah, I mean, Tennessee, obviously Jarrett Garantano is coming back for his redshirt senior season this year. And they do have another quarterback who's in the same class as Taulia and Brian Maurer. But would you classify these quarterbacks as like great quarterbacks, Zach?
No, I think both of them have a similar ceiling. I would say, though, I mean, Brian Maurer, he played really well down the stretch for Tennessee, but I think they bring pretty similar skill sets, I would say. So I think that would be an interesting competition, to say the least.
I think it would definitely be interesting just because, I mean, what happened last year? We saw Jarrett Garantano start the season last year, right? And then guess
Yeah, he
what?
did.
He got benched for Brian Maurer. Brian Maurer gets hurt. He plays 3 games. He goes 2-2 at when he played. He gets hurt. Jarrett Garantano's back. I'm sorry, JT Shrout was back after that. And then Jarrett Garantano after JT Shrout got benched, right? I mean, and the best record out of any of these quarterbacks is Brian Maurer, who went 2-2 last season.
And he played Georgia one of the games. Let's also throw that in there.
Okay, I guess we can throw that in there. But I mean, I think that it would be a great competition there in Tennessee. And I think this is a team that, like I said, Taulia has been leaning towards since the beginning of his recruiting cycle. And I definitely wouldn't want to count this team out for Taulia next year.
No, I don't blame you at all. And I mean, to be fair, Brian Maurer had Tennessee beating Florida early in that game too. So let's not forget that. I like the pick of Tennessee. I think Tennessee was his number 2 school, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Right.
Behind Alabama. And he knows Jeremy Pruitt. I mean, Jeremy Pruitt was at Alabama for a while. I mean, they recruit these kids so young. Jeremy Pruitt probably already knew who this kid, who Taulia was. They have a relationship. But for right now, we're going to move on to another topic, guys. Another one on recruiting. And, we're going to go to Clemson, for the first time this episode. We'll be back later. But a recent development came out of Clemson, and it involved the almost $100,000 spent by Clemson Athletics in one weekend on recruiting. And during the 2019 season, Clemson hosted 11 different official visits for recruits and spent upwards of $85,000 to kind of wine and dine these players. And that weekend, Brandon, to show how this worked, 10 of the 11 official visitors ended up signing with Clemson, and one of their unofficial visitors, Will Shipley, 5-star running back this year, just recently committed last week. And I just want to highlight some of the stuff for you guys. Clemson paid almost $9,000 solely on flights to Clemson, almost $2,000 on black car services to and from the airport, and over $30,000 on just hotel rooms alone. So, and the spending list goes on and on. They spent almost $20,000 on a steakhouse dinner the first night. And, it brings up an interesting question. I mean, Brandon, so should the NCAA limit, manage, kind of control what teams can spend on recruiting each year?
So let me say this before I get started. I mean, I don't really understand how you can't buy a meal for a player once they sign with the team in the NCAA, but you can spend upwards of $85,000 on one weekend for recruits. How does that make sense? It doesn't. What I'm trying to get across right now is, and I want to make this abundantly clear before I get into my rant, is that right now, while there's not a rule, I don't see a reason why if you have it, you shouldn't spend it. You can't pay these recruits, right? You can't be like, hey, here's your cut of the $85,000 that we spent on this weekend's recruiting trip, but you can spend it on certain things and indulge them while they're there, right? I don't see a reason why you shouldn't be able to do that while there's not a rule. I just don't understand how this isn't against the rules right now. Like I said, you can't. I mean, you literally cannot go out to lunch with a player and pay for his meal, but you can do this for recruits.
Well, yeah, I must say, because I think the NCAA rule is you can pay for all this kind of stuff for recruiting 2 family members, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, but I don't really understand why that's the rule. So obviously, I don't really agree with it. I don't see a reason why. I think this makes for an unfair advantage for teams that they do have it. These bigger programs, these schools that aren't struggling financially. I think it makes for less competition, and that's really why I'm against it. I think that it limits the competition that's allowed in the NCAA because, just in the ACC alone, who do you think has more money, Zach? I mean, does Clemson have more money, or do you think that Boston College has more money? I mean, Clemson obviously has a lot more money to spend on the football recruiting. So you give Clemson an unfair advantage by allowing them to spend almost $100,000 housing recruits for one weekend. To me, I don't know. I can't see a reason why this should be allowed.
Yeah, I mean, just to put it in perspective for you, Brandon, the only other ACC school that spent over $1 million in one fiscal year in recruiting was Florida State.
Right, and they have it. They might have more money than Clemson does.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, just to kind of frame this issue, guys, almost $100,000 was spent by Clemson in one recruiting weekend. Wisconsin in the 2018 year only spent around 350,000 for the entire year on recruiting.
Right. I mean, it's
And
crazy.
and the only teams in the 2018 year, which are the numbers that are available now, I couldn't find the 2019 numbers. I don't think they're out yet, but Bama, Tennessee, and Georgia were the only teams to spend over $2 million in recruiting.
Jeez, dude.
And I believe it was every single SEC school, Texas, Oklahoma, Clemson, Florida State, Penn State, and a handful of others that spent over $1 million on recruiting. I mean, if you look at the top 20 in recruiting, all those teams are in there. And so, it kind of brings a question to, like, yeah, schools have different budgets based on success, but should we have – so, Brandon, my proposal is for you is, should we have something like a salary cap that we see in professional sports where, yes, if you have the money, you can spend it, but at the same time, we aren't allowing a team like, let's say, the early 2000 Yankees just to buy all the talent.
Right, and that's – yes, absolutely, Zach. That's – look, you made my point for me already. Salary cap is – or not salary cap, but a recruiting cap is what we need, right? I mean, there's the scholarship cap that teams have. So, in which I guess kind of makes my argument a little bit weaker because you can only offer this many players a scholarship. So it kind of defeats the purpose of spending $2 million on recruiting in a year. But I mean, I don't see a reason why why something like a recruiting cap would be a bad idea. I think that would make things not only more fair than college football, but I think it would create far more competition. I think that we wouldn't be sitting here watching a team like Clemson just blow Duke out of the water I don't think that we'd see that as often if this recruiting cap was set.
Well, I mean, I guess you also would run into the problem of, I mean, where would you set that budget? Would you take into account Group of Five schools, or would you just make it a Power Five thing?
I mean, why not take Group of Five into
well, because
account?
I mean, you have like a Group of Five school like Appalachian State or FIU or someone like that who may be the outlier of not having a lot of money and just drag that average down.
No. I'm not saying, hey, let's set this budget at $50,000. I'm saying put it at something reasonable. I mean, a $500,000 budget for the year on recruiting would work just fine. And like you said earlier, if you have it, spend it. That's fine. But if you don't, then you don't go over that. You don't even have to worry about that. But you don't have a team like, what would you say? Alabama spent $2 million on recruiting?
Yeah, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee all spent over $2 million.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't think that we should put this number like criminally low. I mean, even $750,000, even maybe $1 million. I understand a lot of teams can't do that, but you don't have these outliers that are just, look. My argument is probably just falling to shambles because Tennessee spent $2 million on recruiting.
Hey, Tennessee's the number 2 class in the country right now.
Yeah, they're doing pretty well right now, but in the past, man. But yeah. Do you see what I'm saying? I don't think that we should be setting this cap at like $100,000. I think it should be higher than that. And if you have it, spend it. There's no reason why you should punish a team for spending what they have. I just think that it makes for better competition if teams have a limit as to how much they can spend on housing recruits, especially when you can't pay these players after they sign, right?
Right. I mean, I think so I don't have a problem with not capping recruiting, to be honest with you. I think there's one variable in terms of this that should be capped or at least monitored more closely. So hear me out here. I feel like access is a huge problem when it comes to this, Brandon. I mean, when you look at how much they spent on flights, I mean, does having this large budget allow teams to get visits from players that other teams in their conference may not? I mean, So let's just take Virginia. I mean, Virginia probably has more than like the lowest, but like Syracuse. Can Syracuse get kids from California to visit in bulk like this?
No.
And still have money
California,
for
kids from Florida, kids from any of these top. I mean, they're getting kids from the Northeast mainly because they can't afford to fly kids out from the corners of the country that they're not in. And that's usually where the talent's at, right? I mean, we look at the states that have the most talent when it comes to recruiting. We're looking at California, Texas, Florida, Georgia. Do you really think they can fly those kids in?
No, definitely not. I mean, and you look at the type of recruits that are coming too. I mean, they're dropping so much money. I mean, it was a 48-hour, visit, and I believe if you look at the list of visitors that weekend, official visitors, 11 of the 12 were top 250 players.
Right.
Including 3 top 10 players, which they all ended up signing, including the number 1 player in the country, Brian Barisi, was there. And, they spent all this money on travel. They spent all this money on steakhouse dinners. They spent all this that they gave. So I know this will probably make you mad, Brandon. I mean, did you know that the student athletes that house these players get $75 a day to entertain the prospects on official visits?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so they pay all that. Every single night, I believe, they spent over $1,000 on dinner, and it's just, to me, I feel like it just provides access. I mean, if you tell a kid, hey, you can go visit Boston College and they can't pay for your travel, they will house you, but they also are not going to give you a $4,000 steak dinner. I mean, you're going to take the visit where you get more stuff, right?
Right. Yeah.
It's just, I feel like it gives unfair access to teams, and I think that should be monitored. I mean, do I think that some of these families can afford to travel across the country? No, I don't. And I think it should be covered, but I think there should be some type of limit of or help to some of these smaller programs. I mean, think about, for me, I'm all about increasing parity in college football. I mean, I want to see different teams win the national championship, regardless if it's my team or not. I mean, how fun was this college football season when LSU came out of nowhere and won the national championship? How refreshing was it not to see a Clemson or Alabama national championship?
Yeah, it was great because that's all we've gotten for the past 5 years.
Exactly. And when Ohio State came out of nowhere and won the national championship with the third string starting quarterback, or when Auburn came out of nowhere and won with Cam Newton, or Florida State came out of nowhere with Jameis Winston. I mean, things like that are what make college football so great. And, yes, so the outlier that tears down the argument is Wisconsin, who spends $350,000 a year, but still gets to the Rose Bowl. Right. But also you're Wisconsin, and I feel like you still can compete with whatever. I mean, I feel like that's such an outlier because I think the culture in Wisconsin is different. I mean, they're not flashy. And so if they were paying an outrageous amount, it would be so much different. But I agree with you. I think it does give an unfair advantage to school. But I understand the people who don't want the NCAA to get involved, because every time the NCAA gets involved, something goes wrong. Brandon, I mean, how many times have we seen the story where the NCAA thinks they're doing something good and totally botches the job?
Almost all the time.
Yeah, I mean, literally every single time. So I think this is going to become an ongoing debate. I mean, we're covering this on our show. I mean, Brandon, I don't think we've seen any real talk about changing the way this works. I mean, this Clemson report is one of the first that's come out and gained national attention. So I think we're on the forefront of this, and I think this is going to become a real problem moving forward, especially if we keep seeing, I just said every single SEC school that I can find outside of Kentucky and Vandy, I believe, spent over $1 million on recruiting. That includes Arkansas, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, every single school. And you're telling me that teams are going to let that happen when the SEC had, 6 top 10 teams in the 2020 recruiting cycle?
No, that's not.
It's going to come to a head, I think. But we're going to let this rest. We're probably going to come back and address this topic later. But for right now, we're going to move on to our next topic, and it's a new segment for us. It's going to be an ongoing one called Hot Seat Watch. So, like, going into every season, there are coaches across the country that know this could be their last season if certain goals are not met. We've seen programs like LSU decide they need a change and got rid of Les Miles, a legendary coach. We've seen fans push administrations to let a coach walk due to their expectations not being met. And this expired this series, and we're going to break down which head coaches are on the hot seat going into the 2020 college football season. We're going to do this by conference to kind of make it easier. We're going to start with the ACC today. So, Brandon, which head coaches do you feel are on the hot seat right now from this conference?
Oh man, this is a hard segment for me to just tackle all at once, because I don't know who's on the hottest seat right now. I think there's a handful of coaches. So I've got 3 that I think are on the hot seat in the ACC right now, and I'll go ahead and start that list out with Manny Diaz. I think I have to. I understand he's a second-year coach. He's only been at Miami for 1 year. But what did he do in that 1 year? You know, he's following the legacy of Mark Richt at Miami. And Mark Richt, in his last season, went 7-5. But before that, I mean, we're talking 10-3 seasons, 9-4. I mean, we're talking about greatness out of Mark Richt. Or not greatness, but doing really well. And then you have Manny Diaz, who steps in, goes 6-7, and loses in the Independence Bowl to Louisiana Tech. And the reason that I have him on my hot seat right now is because not only because of his last season record, which was, you know, he made a bowl game. He got destroyed in that bowl game by Louisiana Tech, which I don't think should happen if you're Miami. But because I think that he has a ton of talent next season. And if he can't do anything with this talent next season, if he can't do anything with this incredible defensive line, overall just a great defense, and Derek King taking the snaps, I don't know what you're going to do in the future. You know, if you're Manny Diaz, I think that you have to. You kind of have to worry about your job security coming up here.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I didn't have Manny Diaz. So I do think Miami is a program that is going to let a coach have more than 2 years. I mean, like you said, Derek King is a massive upgrade at quarterback. They have arguably the best defensive line in the ACC. I know Clemson's in the ACC. I know Pitt's got a good defensive line, but I don't think there's a better defensive end combo than Quincy Roche and Gregory Rousseau. It's just that elite. Both of them could end up being top picks in the NFL draft, and they're going to make a run at 20-plus sacks. And I think it's going to be Gregory Rousseau. Check out our last episode. He's my number 3 prospect in this next draft class if he declares. But for me, Brandon, I'm going to also have a second-year head coach. I hate doing this, but this is a school I don't think is going to give a third year to someone who has as bad of a first year as he had, and that's Jeff Collins at Georgia Tech.
Right.
And it's only a second year. I got you. But 3-9 last year is not going to cut it again. I mean, you dropped the triple option offense. That was a staple at Georgia Tech. Had almost zero success. And so he didn't buy any goodwill with Georgia Tech fans, any goodwill with Georgia Tech administration, ADs, anything like that. And my biggest thing about him being on the hot seat is, have you seen their schedule, Brandon?
No, I haven't.
In the first 5 weeks, they play Clemson, UCF, and then take road trips to North Carolina and Virginia Tech.
Yeah, that's not great.
And they have a D3 opponent week 2, so they'll probably be 1-4 going into their bye week. That's a critical period for Collins. And Brandon, you're like, okay, well, the second half of the schedule has to let up. In the later weeks of the season, they have Virginia, the defending, they went to the ACC championship last year. They travel to Pitt, and then they have Notre Dame, Miami, and then travel to Georgia.
Yeah, it's tough.
That's 9 guaranteed losses on their schedule, and doesn't even include tough road games against Syracuse and Duke.
Right.
So if Collins goes 1-11, 2-10, 3-9 again, I mean, how can Georgia Tech not move on here? I mean, yes, they might give him one more year, but I think if I really see this team having a real shot at going 2-10, 3-9 again. And I don't see Georgia Tech giving Collins that much rope here, and I think they're going to cut him pretty soon, especially if the morale gets way low and they go 1-11. I mean, if your only win is over a D2, D3 team, that is not acceptable for an ACC team like Georgia Tech.
No, it's absolutely not. And we're talking about a Georgia Tech program that was, I mean, that is storied, right? I mean, Georgia Tech's one of the great teams in college football history. That's I don't know. For me personally, it's like when I think of college football, Georgia Tech's a team that kind of pops into my head, like historically, not recently. But I mean, to be kind of living in the shadow here of Paul Johnson at Georgia Tech, a coach that was so great for so long at Georgia Tech, it's tough to go 3-9 right now.
Yeah, I mean,
so yeah,
you got to think 5 years. Like 5 years ago, they were in a New Year's Six Bowl at 11-3 and beat Mississippi State.
Right. Yeah.
Just 5 years ago, and they have the wheels have come off on this program, and I think they're going to swing for the fences, man. If Jeff Collins can't get it rolling, he's gone, and I think Georgia Tech is going to throw money at a big name to come in there and get this thing rolling again.
Right, as they should. He was also one of my picks. So yeah, I'm agreeing with you here 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, if I had to pick a second one, okay, this one's kind of unfair. I get it, but I'm gonna have to go with Dave Doran at NC State.
That's my other pick. I mean, all right, love it.
Like, I know. I mean, Brandon, we covered on the podcast how just ravaged NC State was in terms of injuries down the stretch. I mean, I believe almost their entire defense was just out at one point. But for a coach that historically wins 8-9 games in a season, another 4-8 season, another 3-9 season is not going to cut it. I mean, you have tough games against Louisville, Mississippi State, and they have a sneaky game where they travel to Troy in Alabama, and they have Florida State and at Clemson all before their bye week. That's 4 losses almost guaranteed. And a travel to Troy, ask LSU what happens when you play Troy. I mean, Troy can beat anybody on any day. So I think NC State could be in real trouble, and their second half of the schedule is easier, but it's getting through that first half. They still have Wake Forest and UNC late in the season. I mean, this team, for me, looking at a roster, has enough talent to get 7 to 9 wins per year. But if they don't reach bowl eligibility again, I can see the fans screaming for a change. I mean, Dornan's been here since, I believe, 2013, and he's had time to build his program, and they're not going to let the injury excuse get him through another year. So he's got to win now, or I think he could be out the door.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have 2 losing seasons in NC State and stay, right? I mean, and this is a coach that, obviously 4-8 this past season, they were ravaged by injuries, like Zach said. Before that, I mean, he made bowl games consistently for the previous 5 seasons. In his first season, he went 3-9, but he was taking over for a team that wasn't great at that point. And we all know where Dave Doran came from. He came from that Northern Illinois team back in 2012 that shocked the nation. I mean, they ended up going 12-2 that season. So yeah, I mean, do I realistically see him having another losing season this year? Not unless they're ravaged by injuries again. I think this NC State team is I think that they're destined for a bowl game this season. I think they have to be, and if they're not, then he's gone. You can't have 2 losing seasons here.
Yeah, I mean, and especially with the ACC, so you have Clemson dominating, UNC's on the upswing, Virginia Tech's on the upswing, Virginia just went to a New Year's Six Bowl, Florida State's got a new fresh start under Mike Norvell. I think these other ACC teams are starting to feel the pressure of, we have to win and win now, and so I don't think a school like NC State, who their in-state rival, is probably going to make a run at the New Year's Six Bowl at the ACC championship. I don't think they're going to let that happen. And with Georgia Tech, like you said, it's a historically pretty good program, and I don't think they're going to keep accepting these this 3-4 win seasons for much longer. I mean, these fans really expect success, and especially when recently you've beaten teams like Georgia. And you're letting your in-state rival be one of the best teams in the country, and you are going 3-9. And I believe Clemson beat them 63 to like 14 last year to open the season.
Right.
That's unacceptable.
Yeah, it's nuts. Anyway, yeah. So those are my three choices for hot seat in the ACC.
Yeah, hey, we're going to come back at you guys with the Big Ten next episode. That should be an interesting one to say the least. I think Brandon knows where I'm going to go with that one.
yeah. I've got one coach in particular gone. Got to be
gone, like for good.
I think he's done for. Yeah.
Well, guys, tune in to hear Brandon's funeral, like obituary for that coach. But for right now, we're going to move on. Last segment of the day. It's another recruiting update. You guys love these segments. So we continue our 2021 recruiting update. We've covered Ohio State, North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, USC's rebuild, and Florida we covered last week. We bring you guys another update on the trail, but now we head to Clemson, South Carolina, and we analyze what the Clemson Tigers are doing this recruiting cycle. They're trying to follow up one of the best classes in college football and especially school history, which ranked number 3 in the country. They've already jumped into the top 4 of the rankings this season, and this class is stacked with some elite recruits. They have a whole 6 top 100 recruits already committed. Brandon, what do you think this says about what this program is becoming? And really and truly, can you speak to what you think of Dabo Swinney's work on this, just on the recruiting trail in general, but especially this year?
Yeah, listen, and as much as I'd love to downplay the greatness of this class so far, I just can't. I mean, what do they have? They have I think it's 9 4-star recruits right now, right?
Yeah, and then a 5-star.
And a 5-star. And the 5-star just came last week, and that's in Will Shipley, the running back. But look, it's great. I can't say anything bad about it. I'd like to, but I can't. I mean, when you're getting the number 1 running back in the country, the number 1 inside linebacker in the country, the number 1 tight end in the country, I mean, and the list goes on. I mean, the number 2 center in the country. And on top of all of that, I mean, you're building off of an insane recruiting class the past year. I mean, you had the 3rd best recruiting class in 2020, and you're already at number 4 for 2021. I don't know. To me, there's nothing bad to say. I guess when you have $85,000, $100,000 to spend on one weekend of housing recruits, then that goes a far way. Not only that, don't let me discredit them like that. Dabo Swinney's a great recruiter. Clemson's a great destination for anybody looking for a football program to play at in college. So, yeah, I mean, obviously their success in the past has made them just one of these top destinations. I mean, when you see these top recruits in the country, Zach, I mean, this is about the time of year that people are releasing their top 3, top 5 teams. What do you see? You see these teams boiling down to Clemson, LSU, Alabama, sometimes Georgia. Sometimes, I mean, they're just the top. They're always in that conversation when any of these top players are deciding where they want to go. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's incredible what they've done over the past few seasons as far as recruiting is concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any question between both of us that this is going to be another top 3 class. I think it's going to be one of the most elite classes in the country. I mean, this class right now, I mean, Brandon, it's May 10th as we're recording, 11th as this episode comes out. They already have nothing but 5 and 4 stars.
Yeah.
That's unheard of. I mean,
Every single one of their commits right now is in ESPN's top 300. That's how do you do that? You know,
it's just insane. I mean, even if you look at the 3 teams that are above them, I mean, you have North Carolina, Tennessee, and Ohio State, and the average recruit ranking for Clemson is higher than all 3 of them. And those other classes, I mean, Tennessee has 12 3-stars in their class, while Ohio State and North Carolina have 4 and 3 respectively. I mean, they're building this class on just elite potential rather than just sheer numbers. And if these other schools didn't have more, I guess, a higher volume of recruits, Clemson would have the number 1 class in the country right now. And it's coming, guys. I mean, Clemson is most likely going to land the number 1 recruit in the country. I'm just telling you, it's coming down to USC and Clemson. I'm picking Clemson in a fight over USC every single time. And in this class, I believe you already kind of covered it. They have the top ranked running back, inside linebacker, and tight end in the country.
Yeah.
And that goes along. Last year, they landed the top strong side defensive end, pro style quarterback, outside linebacker, and defensive tackle. That's outrageous. I mean, you're telling me they can land 7 different positions, the number one player in the country, and this gives them more depth at almost any position compared to other teams throughout the country. Let's talk about recent commits. Last week, Will Shipley, the 5-star running back, I kind of highlighted it earlier, committed to Clemson. Elite speed already with a 4.40, guys, and he can explode on any play. The only thing I see is he just needs to add some size. I mean, he's 5'11", that's fine height-wise, but he's only 198. If he can add 5 or 10 pounds of muscle, this kid could be a real problem for teams. And his pro comparison already is Joe Mixon. I'll take Joe Mixon right now on any team you want to put him on for me.
Yeah, for sure. Especially talent-wise. We can talk off the field stuff later, but talent-wise, absolutely.
Yeah, talent-wise. Yeah, sorry guys. Not to be insensitive. Off the field stuff. You can keep that, but I'll take the talent any day. And Brandon, I really want to talk about just where they're getting these recruits from. I mean, yeah, Shipley's from North Carolina. That checks out. But if you look at Jeremiah Trotter Jr., he's out of Philadelphia. Bo Collins out of California, Jake Brentstole, Tennessee. They have recruits from all over the country. They have recruits from Florida, Georgia, Maryland. I mean, they're landing recruits all across the country, and it goes back to our debate earlier. It's because these kids can come and visit, and they're treated like royalty, to be completely honest with you. And Clemson's making a real impact, and I think they're changing the way recruiting is being done.
Absolutely. And one thing that kind of stands out to me, I mean, you mentioned all these places that they have recruits from. I mean, we all know that Clemson loves to recruit in Georgia. They don't have any commits right now in South Carolina. That's crazy to me. Not one.
That's almost disrespectful, to be completely honest with you. They're just like, hold the South Carolina talent. We'll get those later.
You can have them. We don't care.
And it speaks to just how, I guess, relatable and how much Dabo Swinney's liked. And they're leading right now for a top 13 offensive lineman. He's 13th ranked in the country. They're leading for a top 50 outside linebacker. They're leading for a top 75 defensive tackle. I mean, it's just not fair, to be honest with you. They're in the final 5 for the number 6 player in the country, the number 7 player in the country. This class is going to be outstanding. And I just want to highlight another recruit in their class, and it's Jeremiah Trotter Jr., 4-star, number 1 inside linebacker in the country. He's going to be the next great Clemson inside linebacker. I mean, yeah, he's probably not as athletic as Isaiah Simmons, but literally nobody is. Isaiah Simmons was a once-in-a-lifetime prospect, but this kid has elite ball instincts, and he might be the most surefire tackler in this whole recruiting class. And I know you can't always hang your hat on this, but he has an NFL bloodline too. His father, Jeremiah Trotter, was an NFL linebacker for the Eagles in the mid 2000s when the Eagles were in the playoffs every year, and they went to the Super Bowl with Donovan McNabb and T.O. one year. I mean, his dad was on those teams, and so he has the bloodline to be really, really successful. And prototypical size at 5'11", 210. I would like to see him get a little bit faster. He's only about a 4.8, 4.9 right now on 40. But this kid, that's junior stats. This kid has a whole senior year of football to play. And Brandon, I mean, has anyone been better at developing talent than Dabo Swinney and Clemson?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you have to do that to them.
I mean, how hard is it to develop already elite talent that are 5-stars? It's really hard to develop those kids and get them to be better. I mean, yes, it's always a big story when someone takes 3-star talent, does something special, but a lot of these guys come in here and already think they're the best player in the country. And so pulling that in and telling them that they can be better. I mean, Isaiah Simmons was a great recruit, but to see what they did with his development is just off the charts, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, good God. I mean, like you said, a once in a lifetime prospect somehow dropped to number 9 in the draft. We'll talk about that at some other point. But yeah, they developed him. I think it's incredible how they did that.
I mean, so really and truly, how much more does Dabo Swinney have to do for you to call him the best recruiter in the country?
Man, you're not going to get me to say that, but for someone else, probably not much.
You're not. So, guys, I just want to say this. They develop talent so well. Brandon, where do you think Isaiah Simmons was ranked in the 247 composite?
Oh, shoot. I have no idea. I don't even know how many stars he had. Mid 200s?
451st, 3-star.
That's tough. That's tough. That's a bad look for me.
Out of Kansas.
Yeah, real bad look for me. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, what do you want me to say?
I mean, guys, they're reaching into Kansas and getting 3-star commits that Kansas State thought they had and turning them into top 5 prospects. That's great. It's just not fair. And, you look at even their 4-star prospects that they've gotten. I mean, they have real talent down this, list. I mean, Jordan Hancock out of Georgia is going to be an elite, ball playing cornerback. I mean, he is going to be another shutdown corner. And guys, I don't think this Clemson dynasty is going anywhere. I really see Clemson winning multiple national championships in the upcoming year. I mean, Dabo Swinney, I'm just telling you guys, just buckle up because he is going to make a serious run at the record that Nick Saban has right now.
Ah, man, wouldn't that be insane?
I mean, dude, what happens if he gets Trevor Lawrence for 2 more years?
Oh, they might just cancel football altogether because that just wouldn't be fair.
And behind Trevor Lawrence, you have the number 1 pro style quarterback in the country last year.
Right.
Like, come on, man. It's just the talent that this team has is just, I don't even have words for it, guys. I mean, you just look at what they're doing. I mean, Brandon, do you see a player like that they are in the running for, that they already have committed, that you just look at and you're just like, he's going to be a real problem come when his senior year at Clemson?
I mean, obviously Will Shipley, right? I mean, this is the guy. I mean, for the past few minutes, I don't know if you can tell, guys, I've been kind of checked out. I've been watching his highlight tape over again, and he's a monster. First of all, he runs a 4.46. And that's as a junior in high school, right? He runs that's as a sophomore in high school. That was in 2019. So who knows? He could be faster. He's not a small back. He's 5'11", 200 pounds. And I can only imagine he's going to put more weight on. He might even get fat. I mean, he's going to be a problem because he is the type of back that the NFL is turning toward and that college football is slowly turning toward. In that back that can, run it down your throat when he wants, or he can go out for a pass, play slot receiver, basically. Right.
So looking at him, I mean, yeah, it might be just based on like what he looks like, but I get like Christian McCaffrey vibes from this kid.
Yes, that's racist.
Stop. I mean, he's the exact size of Christian McCaffrey too. I mean, down to like the height.
Right, and yeah, I would compare him to McCaffrey.
Christian McCaffrey is 5'11", 205. This kid's 5'11", 200 as a sophomore.
Right. It's
a serious problem. And let's not forget, I mean, it's coming down to Clemson, Alabama, USC for Corey Foreman, the number 1 player in the country, 6'5", 265 out of Corona, California. I mean, and his pro comparison is Cameron Jordan from the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, pretty good player to be compared to.
Yeah, no kidding. And you're gonna add him to Miles Murphy and Brian Barisi, both top 7 prospects last year. Miles Murphy's 6'5", 265, and Brian Barisi's 6'6", 300 pounds. That's just their defensive line. And the bad part is a backup is going to be DeMonte Capehart out of IMG, who is also the first recruit that was not a 5-star. He was ranked 33rd in the nation. He's 6'5", 300, and he'll most likely be a backup at Clemson.
That shouldn't be legal. That should be outlawed.
This team, guys, I'm just saying, Alabama has some really, really strong stretches in the early 2010s. I mean, that 09 Alabama team was elite. Dabo Swinney, man, is really going to push. I mean, this is like playing NCAA 14 and just putting the recruiting on easy.
Yeah.
It's unfair, to be completely honest with you. And I never thought I'd say this, man, but Clemson, South Carolina is becoming a college football destination. I mean, I've been to Clemson. It is just popped up in the middle of somewhere in South Carolina. It's a beautiful campus. I love going there. I can't wait to go again. But to say that is going to be the center of college football is just mind-blowing to me.
Right. It is.
But, guys, that wraps up our episode today. We appreciate you guys tuning in again. We love all our listeners out there. You guys are why we do this. A quick reminder, guys, announcement going up on social media, I guess sometime today, since it'll be Monday when this comes out. Live stream. It will be coming Wednesday. You guys have been asking for it. We're going to deliver it. It is going to be live on Periscope, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook Live, all that good stuff. Check us out. We're answering strictly y'all's questions. We aren't coming with a script. We're not coming with our agenda. This is going to be you guys directing our episode. We're going to answer the biggest questions that you guys have. We've kind of talked about it. We'll most likely do this every 2 weeks or so. During the season, it might be more because there's going to be all kind of stuff to talk about. But tune in there. We'll drop I believe we have a Twitch account. I don't know what the username is right now. We'll get that to you guys very soon though. Social media though, you can find all our announcements, all our posts, all our episodes. Instagram at @the_Bluebloods, Facebook at the Bluebloods Pod, Twitter at __Bluebloods. Follow, like, subscribe, everything. YouTube, search the Bluebloods Podcast. You can find us on there. Subscribe to the channel. Watch old episodes of the podcast, all that stuff. You can find the podcast absolutely anywhere, guys. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you want to listen, we're there. Tell your friends, family, everybody about this podcast.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yeah,
tell your moms.
Tell your moms on Mother's Day. Tell them to subscribe to the Blue Bloods. Or you know what? Just take their phone and tell them you got them a present. Subscribe to the Blue Bloods for them on this lovely Mother's Day. But, guys, you guys are the best listeners in the country. We appreciate y'all. You guys keep tuning in. We kept dropping episodes. That's how that goes. But for right now, we out.